Hello, I'm Ryan, and I was I saw the video my mom made, and it inspired me to come here to say my truth. And for me, it's going to be different because I'm going to need it in more of an interview format because, oof, it's just hard to remember the specific situations that happened. So I'm just going to have my mom ask me the questions to help jog my memory, because I think I just blocked a lot of it out. And it is true, I had zero connection with him, and it's probably part of why it was easy for me to just not block or connect. Because if you have no reason to care or connect, even if you try to connect, it makes it hard to remember things. So I'm ready when you are.
Well, first thing I think everybody needs to know, you've been a Christian since you were a very little boy. How old were you when you accepted Christ?
I was 4 years old.
And how has that impacted your life? And I realize that's a big question.
Whew. Well, before I knew what it was, it gave me discernment, open mindedness, but it also gave me the empowerment to be real, to be me, even when there would be forces that would want me to be what they wanted me to be.
Now, you were the first one who actually told me that you thought your biological dad was a narcissist. I
Yeah,
remember being surprised by that. That's terrible. Don't say that. But tell me what led you to that conclusion. What made you say that to me?
it's actually pretty simple. When I was in high school, I had a really cool sociology teacher, and he showed us the video on narcissists, and I'm like, oh my goodness, my biological father is just like that. I gotta show this to my mom when the time is right, because as you know, I want you to know the truth. I wanted to tell you the truth, and I knew for years that he wasn't treating you well. I just knew I couldn't mention certain things like divorce because I was afraid that would come back on me. I was like the golden child on his good side, and I knew he had the darkness and capability to be abusive or dominant, and I just wanted to keep that side of him at bay. So,
So, thinking back to when you were as young as you can remember, when you were a little boy, what were your experiences with him like?
mm, I felt like it's really weird dynamic. I feel like when we weren't talking about you, I felt like I was hanging out with a friend who was kind of edgy, a little bit dark. Mm, definitely claimed to be a Christian a lot. And I guess with all of the issues he said he had, I believed him. I'm just like, okay, if he is a Christian, he just has a lot that he's working through. So it took me a long time to question that about him.
When you talk about witnessing how he treated me, what do you
Oof.
specifically remember that you're? I mean, I'm comfortable with you sharing almost anything, so.
Oh, I know. he just kept you down. He wouldn't really let you do or say much. And if you did do something, especially something good, he would work against it unless it was like out of his control. An example of that would be like when you volunteered at the CPC. Like, he let you do that. It made him look good, but you were doing it because your heart wanted to do that.
At what point, because I know that you thought for years before we ever talked about it, at what point did you think we might be better off apart?
Probably when we were, I think I was 5. It's either Golden Corral or Ryan's. We were just talking, and then somehow a big question came up, and it was like, what would he do or how would he feel if you passed on? And what was his response again?
Well, he said that he couldn't be alone and we'd have to find somebody else. It was like the part that bothered me most about that is there was like no hesitation.
Yeah.
No,
I remember that.
apparent, like he'd be sad that I was gone, nothing, just, well, I'd have to find somebody else.
And I just remembered sitting there looking at my food being like, you idiot. Like, why on earth would you say that? And
Right.
yeah. And you were understandably extremely upset, and he took you for granted.
Yeah.
He made you do all the work. He didn't do any of the work. He was very invested in, other than his hobbies, he was very invested in the work he would do, what his job was. He never saw, anytime he had a job, even when it was helping other people, because I would be like, you should be grateful for what you're doing because you're helping people. And then I just became clear over time he didn't care that he was helping people. For him, it was about the status, praise, probably money a little bit. He always talked about how in his hobby he was always investing, but even though he was investing, he never did anything to create revenue. Just kept spending and spending and getting and doing what he wanted. And man, that really wrecked the house.
Right. So you talked about seeing the darkness in him.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? How would you explain?
Well, oh man, I got some disturbing examples coming back to me, but one day I was walking with him around Deming Park, and it was just him and me. And he would randomly bring stuff up, like snuff films. He was the one that told me what they were, and with the way he talked about it, he made it sound like he talked about a lot of them, and he would talk loudly too, so like other people would hear. And I actually had to ask him to stop talking. Or a lot of times in public, especially when I was in high school, we would just be walking around like a couple of dudes, and a few times he would look over at a girl and say she's attractive, and then I'd be like, and I just thought he was an idiot. Didn't really think he was trying to be a creep, but like I knew those girls because I went to school with them.
Yeah.
And Yeah, it's really disturbing. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There was also the stuff he would watch on TV. Like, he was obsessed with, like, forensic files and all that stuff. And the way he would watch it was almost like he was taking notes.
Hmm.
And that's part of what led to me later to, like, yeah.
So, as a person who you think of your dad as someone who kind of teaches you how to be a man, how do you think he functioned in that role? How did he impact you?
Honestly, I just follow God and the people he set up in my life. Just felt like he was kind of an idiot, and I didn't feel like I learned anything about being a man except maybe what not to do. Because I mean, it was sometimes it was comedic, other days it was disturbing, and I hated the way you were treated. Yeah, he he knew nothing about being a real man because he was all about himself.
And what about the spiritual aspect of leadership? What do you think about, um, just from your observations, not judging his heart by any means, but what do you think about his profession to be a Christian?
Mm,
How did that show up or not show up? Let's put it that way.
well, I never really saw the fruits, but he professed a lot and he did do the religious things, and I just thought, because of his past and where he came from, kind of came from a rough area, been through some traumatic things, I thought maybe he's just a really weak Christian, you know? Like, I knew my personal relationship with God, and I didn't want to judge his, and I was very careful growing up, and I still am today, about being prideful. So I didn't want to question his closeness to God, and you also encouraged me and let me know that I shouldn't judge him or others' relationship with God just because I got the privilege to accept Jesus at a young age. So, I mean, it's been a balance. But there was just a certain point towards the end where it's like, yeah, I remember what it was. That was a dead giveaway. It was when you gave him the Jesus mat for his cards, and he just utterly rejected it. Like, he could have, like, he didn't have to take it within the tournaments, but he could have still, like, put it somewhere, you know, or presented it. But it was an outright rejection of Jesus, and I'm like, okay, even a weak Christian probably wouldn't handle it like that or do that. And then I combine that with the fruits, and then I'm like, wow, he's been dishonest. He's not a Christian. And that led to me connecting to you being unequally yoked. And then just seeing his attitude, the way he was, how he was like sort of spoiled, leading things the way he wanted. And even though he would sort of lead, he would also just make you do all the work. So, I mean, make you do the work, make the decisions. Like, his way of leading would be like, I feel this, or I want this, but I'm not making the actual decision. And then he would give that to you. But then when there was something he did want to do, he would do it on his own, or just work completely against us because of how much he wanted that thing, even if he knew it wasn't good or healthy. Like, constantly buying unhealthy food, not cleaning, not spending money on things that matter. Like when we try to get a new home. I mean, growing up over at the house we were in, I thought we were poor. I had no idea we could have afforded a place on the nice side of town.
Yeah.
Like, I guess looking back, he just kept wasting the money. And it's part of why on like Christmas and birthdays, I'd be shocked at how much I would get, because it's like, I thought we didn't have any money. Like, I knew we weren't like broke. I thought we were just like low middle class and couldn't move up. I didn't know we had the funds where we could have gotten bigger space and like nicer things. But he just didn't want any of that. He wanted to stay in the dark. Wanted to stay in the crime-ridden area. And I mean, God protected us from a lot over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always felt like, just knowing who I am, I felt like the suburban kid that grew up in the ghetto.
Changing gears here a little bit. In the first video, I talked about you feeling invalidated, not understood. Talk to that a little bit.
Yeah. He definitely tried. And he did. Like, I think his goal might have been to invalidate me, but more so what he did was silence me, censor me, like I couldn't defend you or say you were right, because anytime I would, he would get upset. He never understood why I rarely took his side. And then he started to make it sound like I favored you over him, and I was like, no, I'm just trying to be honest with you. No one's perfect, which means you have stuff to work on too.
Do you feel you were abused?
If I was, it wasn't physical, which makes it kind of hard to detect, especially if you're like the golden child.
Do you think I was abused?
Absolutely.
And without getting too awful specific, what would you say about that?
It's probably the hardest part of all of it was there were days where I'm like, can I stop this? Can I fix this? Can I help them communicate? And then when I realized the problem was him, I would think about maybe it'd be good if they split, but I don't know how I would do that without putting myself into a bad position.
Right.
And I know you did a lot to protect me also. I'd say 100% though. I definitely could have been abused.
You could have. So when I had my encounter with God and I decided to get divorced, go ahead and talk about what that experience was like for you when you first found out, to what you were going through, to what we were dealing with, people saying and thinking, and
Yeah.
expectations and experiences. Anything you want to share, anything that you think might benefit someone who's listening.
I just wanted you to be happy because I knew he couldn't, especially when it was obvious he didn't have Christ and that he didn't want to change. And it's like, well, if you're unhappy with him and all you need to do is leave him, and that would make you happy, then, I mean, you know, that's what I wanted. I was just like, finally.
Do you remember, and I'm sure that you do, speak to a little bit how he behaved when we first decided to get divorced, and how you attempted to maintain a relationship with him and all of that?
Hmm. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
So when we first left,
Yes.
how did he respond? And what happened when you tried to continue having a relationship with him?
Well, it didn't work.
Right?
And he responded very aggressively. He would try to corner me, get information out of me. It felt like he was trying to. It was weird. It kind of went from trying to get me on his side, and if I wouldn't do that, it'd become interrogation. And it would always be about what he wanted. So, like, if I wanted to say something about me, he didn't care. Because all he cared about at that point was how can he get you back?
And at a certain point, I think that the clouds finally parted and he did realize that wasn't going to happen. And so he turned his sights solely on you.
Yeah.
Explain what that was like the way he tried to communicate and the things that he tried to do, and like the text messages, for example.
No. I know we tried to put cleaning and picking up the house as being my responsibility.
3 months after you left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. And he made me feel bad a lot too, like I wasn't doing enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would remember things like, wait, but I'm also just a kid. Like, yes, I played a lot, watched a lot of TV, uh, had some hobbies. Like, I was really into Legos for a long time. I had a lot of distractions when we were over there.
Do you remember how he used to call and text?
Yeah, I do.
Talk about that. I think that's important to share. And the tone. How did you feel he treated you? What did he say to you? Do you remember?
I do. I really wish my phone worked because it's so hard to describe.
Would you say he sent a few texts or a lot of texts?
Oh man, what's the term? He definitely sent me a ton of texts, so just completely.
Blew up your phone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, he completely blew it up. It was.
Yeah.
It's pretty ridiculous, and there's like an emotional spectrum. He would be all over it. There was no rhyme or reason. Like, he didn't even act like a human being, in my opinion. There was no connection or empathy or purpose. Which, if there's no humanity, then what was it? What was it I was talking to? I mean, it was scary, and Yeah,
What
I
was
didn't. I didn't feel good until there was no connection. Until we just cut contact, and or anyone else that is dealing with this, any kids especially dealing with parents like this. This may not be all your situations, but they probably won't listen. And if you can, I would cut contact or just not be intimate. Try to stay on their good side, especially if you're a minor.
so some things that I remember very clearly, and you can speak to this, you can talk about if it's real or not, or if I'm misremembering. I'm simply trying to help get the message out for you. The day that you had a phone conversation with him, we were in a hotel room.
Oh.
And that conversation was so upsetting to you that at that point, I had to make the decision that he couldn't contact you by phone anymore. And he could not understand that. And I was like, well, with text messages, you have time to think through before you respond. And that's what we're going to do from now on, because I'm not going to have you do that to my child again. The language he used with you that day was obscene and abusive.
It was.
And he was constantly telling you didn't respect him and that you were complicit with me. And
oh, that's okay. I want to address that right now, even for this video. I made a lot of decisions on my own during that time. Like, when I heard that you wanted the divorce, I wanted it just as badly. I wanted you out of there. I mean, that put me at peace, especially if I was gonna, like, go to college. I wouldn't want, and I just had the thought of you being there with him. I'm like, hell no. No, 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 no. That'd be horrible. And I'm just grateful to God that did not happen.
Me too. So I guess the harder part to talk about, but I think it's also important, was some of the harassment and stalking and hiding out and all that fun stuff we had to do, like
Man.
and the people, the flying monkeys, and how they contacted us, and even well-meaning people like the judge in the court, and how people talked about, that's your dad, and like talk about some of those experiences and what that was like and how you got through that and what God did during that time. Anything that comes to mind.
Well, for starters, I want to say I feel like you dealt with more of that than me, except when it comes to like the harassment. Like in the harassment, he just wouldn't leave me alone. He would try to find me, or, I mean, I was a greeter at church, and he randomly walked up and gave me this bizarre bear hug and just started crying. And I mean, I was there in the middle of a bunch of people, like, what the heck is going on? And I didn't feel any love coming from him. I just felt freaked, like, the stalker's going nuts. Can someone bring security, please? I mean, even though we might have been, like, connected by blood, that was pretty much it. And he would drive by a lot, and I swear I saw him get pulled over like 3 or 4 times outside one of the places we were living. Because I would just look out the window and be like, there's that car again. And then I have to worry about his work cars. And I have epilepsy, and I don't drive, so like getting a job, that wasn't easy for me. And just because of how bad of a parent he was, and I'm not too worried about it, like, God has really helped me, give me some confidence and stuff, but there's a lot I don't know how to do. and I got some fears that I never got help getting over. Like, on my wish list, I want to be good at biking, I want to know how to swim, I want to mow my first lawn, riding mower preferably. Um, what else?
Driving?
Oh, yeah. Well, you did drop the ball on that one, but that's a complicated story.
Yeah. Roller coasters?
Yes. Yep. Just heights in general.
Yeah.
Like, I do well with secured heights, but like roller coasters, water slides, I do want encouragement to be able to do stuff like that.
And as I was looking online myself, reading about children who grow up in these types of situations, one of the things that they talked about was that sometimes the children that come out don't necessarily have all of the skills and the coping mechanisms and the communication abilities, and they don't have what they need. And I always, I felt very responsible for some of the things you weren't able to do. Like, for example, I tried to help you learn how to ride a bike, but I was so fat I couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
And so it's like...
But you gotta keep in mind there that he also derailed your confidence and did things that made you unhealthy.
Yeah.
And
Well,
like he didn't give you a chance.
there are things that I wish had happened differently. And I take some responsibility. I don't put that all on him.
Yeah.
And things that you are still able to do, and things that we've even started to do from your list. So I feel like there's progress being made. But yes, there are ways in which I feel like you've been a little stunted, and it's not your fault. But we want to change it.
Right.
So,
like, just in talking about this, it's kind of hard to remember and everything. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you weren't.
Were
He
you
was.
were you afraid of him? And if so, what were you afraid of specifically?
I was afraid of how he would be from day to day. Like, I would be on eggshells around him a lot at pretty much any age. And I would just try to, keep him happy, be an encourager, because I knew if he wasn't happy, it's either flight or hide. Like, I would just give him space or try to be quiet, try to keep our pets quiet, let you know the deal and how he's doing that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Status update. And if, obviously, like I said in my previous video, we're like war buddies, and nobody really knows what we went through. This is the tip of the iceberg, but
It is.
I think the most important part to get through here, the role of Jesus in this and of God and getting you and getting us through.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up with that and talk about the hope that people can have in this situation.
Absolutely.
From your perspective.
Well, when we had to leave everything in obedience to God, leaving my distractions and everything, leaving the familiarity, it did feel weird at first, but I never had any regret. Like, I didn't miss any of my stuff. I didn't miss my distractions. Only reason we had any financial security was because of you. You manage the money well. I just say follow and trust God, because He knows what's best for you, even if it's scary or uncomfortable. And if you have to do things that seem crazy to the people in your community, just do it. Like, for example, I had an internship when I was in high school. I did that. But then, when the whole thing went down, and how he was like harassing us, acting crazy, I didn't really have an opening to get a job. Didn't have a way, and part of that was he did isolate us. Yeah. But at the same time, there's also a lot of people in our community that understood what we were going through, and God put them in our path to help us through, like family, friends, church friends, like the real church, not the religious people. Even though the church itself did help a little bit
For
when
sure.
we needed it.
And we'll be always grateful for the way that they did step up during that time.
Amen. I agree with that.
So at the end of it all, what's your message of hope for children in these situations, and as they grow and as they age? And
I guess the best way to say it is God's way and what God says, not the pastors, not the Bible. God speaking directly to you. What He says is always right. What He does and doesn't allow you to do, don't fret about it. Don't make anything happen. Just let God lead you, because lead. Let God lead you, because for all you know, He may move you. I mean, as He did with me. He moves me out of the place we were at, and I had to burn all the ships to do that. And man, I can't even begin to explain how grateful I am for that.
right. So it's a new adventure, it's a new life, it's a new start.
Yeah.
And well, I'm glad that you got to share your story. Not sure, maybe you'll share more in the future. Maybe something will come to you and you'll want to add on to it. But if not, you want to just say your piece and say your goodbye?
Yeah, I could do that. I find it weird how tricky it was for me to be like smooth with my words, but I still hope the effect I wanted to have on people works. And I'm just gonna be real, be me, and I just want everyone to know that this is the truth. Have a good day.